it was a process of, I guess, the heart and the brain weren't quite connected, right? And so, the heart felt amazing during church, but my brain was like, well, yeah, but there's all these things that I don't believe about Christianity. The Bible's hard to read. The Old Testament's really difficult. I remember reading about Lot and his daughters. Right. And after, they left Sodom and Gomorrah, like, that's not fun to read, that part of the book right there. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I closed the Bible, I closed the Bible that day, and the next day I was just like, I'm done with this. I wasn't impressed at all. I couldn't understand that. I was at work, and one of my students, she has an intellectual disability. She was there, I think it was during March break. And she, I guess her comfort zone was like finding something to grab onto at the church basement at Sunnyside and going and reading or sitting off on her own. So she would grab the children's Bible and just read it. And then that day she grabbed the regular Bible, opened it up, and it turns out she's not Christian at all. I asked her mom and dad, she's not Christian. She opened up the Bible to 1 John 4:10, and she said, I want to read to you. So she read to me 1 John 4:10 and said, you need to write this down. She has an intellectual disability. And so I got up and I wrote down 1 John 4:10. And it was almost like maybe God was speaking through her. It was a coincidence. I don't know, but it felt like a magical moment that, don't worry. The Bible's not all like that. Here's a beautiful passage in the Bible. Here's something that's going to turn your heart around. And it did. And that was like a really nice moment. Right. And like, that was like one of those things that, changed my heart. And then watching more videos on the historical idea of Jesus, that he was a real person, because I was still stuck. We've had this conversation before. I was really hung up on Jesus was just a symbol. It was an idea of a dying and resurrected God. I was very hung up on it. I read the book by Timothy Freak. That would really kind of cement it for him. My friend bought into it as well. He totally believed it too. And it wasn't until my friend had mentioned that it's all been debunked. And I'm like, you can't, it's not debunked then. This is before I started going to church that he told me that this theory had been debunked. And he gave me the information, and I read it and looked at it, and he had become a Christian, and I didn't realize it at the time. He was probably still in the closet. But that really changed my heart too. All of a sudden I realized, well, Jesus could have been a real person. That's huge. So, that was a sticking point for me. And once I discovered that, well, wait a second, this could be real, it's not just a symbol, then my brain now is connecting to my heart. And I started having a logical understanding of Christianity to match what my heart was feeling. And once they were congruent, going to church was a much better experience. And that kind of like brought me home.
I love what you're saying. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what you just said was like, the emotional was really good, but I needed to know that there was some intellectual side behind this too, where it's like Jesus was a real person. What I'm reading in the Bible, like there's actually something historical behind it. And it's funny because a lot of people listening to this interview might actually have the other thing where it's like, well, I've heard the apologetics about Jesus, and I've heard about like, the Bible hasn't been hopelessly corrupted and all that, but they might be seeking that other side where it's like, well, I want this like emotional, experiential part of God where it's not just intellectual, but it's actually emotional. So what's like that happening in your story is beautiful and profound for every adventurous truth seeker, because like it has to be both of those things together. You're like, we're not meant to separate them. Certainly with God, like we're meant to know him in this really rich, deep way that's neither like deficient by only being intellectual or by only being emotional. Hey, that clip is from a full conversation where my friend John tells his story of following Jesus after decades of practicing occult and New Age spirituality. Honestly, if that doesn't intrigue you, I don't know what will. If you want to hear the whole story, just click that video right there.